Hello and welcome to another episode of Chuchu is a Ranker. On this episode we're going to be continuing our albums of the year list. This time it's 1994. So yeah, we're balls deep into the 90s and we at least have half a length into the Britpop era. Plenty of great records this year, so without further ado, let's be complete rankers and rank up a storm. These are my personal top 10 albums of 1994. So we're going to be kicking off this list with Jollification by the Lightning Seeds, which was the band's third album. And yeah, this is just the most Britpop sounding thing that ever Britpopped. If you looked up the word Britpop in the dictionary, you'd probably somehow just find an audio sample of the song Marvelous from this record. Yeah, and this is just a really good record of synth pop and rock and pop. Tons of great tracks on this, nothing bad on it. Has Perfect, Lucky You, Change, Marvelous, Punch and Judy. Just that soundscape, immediately nostalgic and indicative of the Britpop era. All the songs on here are really slickly produced and just immediately hooky. So yeah, this might well be a footnote in history music, but it's a good way to kick off this list and a damn fine album. Coming in next, we have Changegiver, which was the debut album by Shedseven. So yeah, I like Shedseven quite a bit. They have elements of the Smiths and the Stone Roses, and a lot of that kind of wide boy laddish swagger that would define Oasis's sound. They also have like a really great guitarist, Paul Banks. I just think he's one of the best melodic guitarists of the Britpop era. I think everything he played on these early Shedseven records is just dripping with gold. And the frontman Rick Witter just has one of those voices that's just immediately identifiable. And this is a really strong, confident debut by them. Like, I love pretty much every track off of this. Highlights include Speakeasy, a really insistent, catchy single. Long Time Dead is really cool. Missing Out sounds pretty much exactly like the Smiths. Ocean Pie is just a magnificent grandstanding ballad. On an Island With You has a long extended instrumental section. You can really hear the skills of the guitarist Paul Banks on that. I love that one. And the best track on this is Dolphin. Love the jumbled kind of bongo rhythms on that. It's a just really cool indie dance track. Awesome stuff. So yeah, this is just a great debut. Coming in next, we have Park Life by Blur, which was the band's third album. So on this record, they're taking that kind of real British kink sound that they were doing on their last record, Modern Life is Rubbish, and just making it a lot more brighter, adding in a lot more pop elements. And yeah, plenty of great tracks off of this. It kicks off with Girls and Boys, which is one of the most famous songs of the Britpop era. I love the grooving bass work on that, really cool. Tracy Jacks is super catchy. End of a Century and Park Life just kind of have that definitive Britpop kind of sound. Really awesome stuff. To the end, brilliant Parisian ballad, and This Is a Low, super emotional, really great album track. So this record is a really famous Britpop release. It's often considered one of the best albums of the Britpop genre. But yeah, I do think there is a lot of filler on this, a lot of tracks that just kind of disappear below the waves for me, and yeah, I just feel it's overrated. But I guess now is as good a time as any to talk about Oasis versus Blur, because it's a very interesting Britpop conundrum, and I'm sure a lot of people are interested in what I have to say about that, or probably not, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So on an ideological level and also sonic level, I prefer Blur, obviously. Artistically, I just think they're more adventurous, and sonically they have like a wider palette, and their lyrics connect with me more. And as a singles band, get out of town. Like, the Blur are absolutely one of the best singles bands of the 90s, but I also feel that album-wise, they haven't really made that definitive album for me personally. I mean, I know a lot of people disagree, and they have this one and Modern Life is Rubbish. I mean, I like those records, but I don't really truly love them. And for me, as much as I prefer Blur to Oasis, Blur don't have any albums that are as good as the first two Oasis records. So yeah, that's where I stand on the whole Oasis versus Blur thing. Take from that whatever you will. But I will quickly say, during their kind of famous chart clash in 1995, I was definitely in the Blur camp, and I did in fact buy the Blur single to support them. But yeah, Park Life, it's a really culturally significant album, and as much as I've just kind of ragged on it and said it's overrated, I do like it. It is a good album, and it's a must-have on this ranking list. Coming in next, we have Everyone's Got One, which was the debut album by Echobelly. So Echobelly are a female-fronted Britpop band, sounds very much like Morrissey, so much so that they actually caught Morrissey's attention and he became a fan of the band. I do think the emulation of Morrissey is a little bit too slavish, but nevertheless, this is an absolutely fantastic record. I love every single track off of this. It kicks off with Today, Tomorrow, Sometimes Never, just a really energetic way to kick off the record. Then you have Father, Ruler, King, Computer, super atmospheric. Give Her a Gun, really insistently catchy. I Can't Imagine the World Without Me, just love those euphoric trumpets on that. Bellyache, really awesome atmospheric track, could be Radiohead. Insomniac, it's like twisted debut single, really cool. Call Me Names, really moving track. The front woman, Sonia Madden, is of ethnic descent, and this one is all about, you know, kind of the racial abuse that she suffered growing up. Don't do racism, people, it's a terrible, terrible thing. Close But is probably my favourite track off the album. I love that stuttering guitar and just the insane catchiness of it, really cool. And Scream, the closing track, just an epic way to wrap up the record. So yeah, this is just a flawless Britpop record. I absolutely love it. Check it out, it's amazing. Coming in next, we have Grace by Jeff Buckley, which was Jeff Buckley's debut album and also only album, because unfortunately Jeff Buckley is just one of those tragedies of rock and roll. Really talented boy, absolutely phenomenally gorgeous singing voice and great songwriter, but unfortunately after this record he went for a spontaneous swim in the Mississippi River and ended up getting caught in the wake of a boat, and unfortunately he drowned. So yeah, it's an incredibly sad thing. But he did leave behind this absolutely fantastic record. It's half kind of electro folk and half kind of art pop. You can hear a lot of influences on like Radiohead's work, what they would do with the Bends, and also later with Muse, especially on their album Black Holes and Revelations. Some of the songs on that really strongly call back to some of the songs on this. Just absolutely fantastic tracks on this. Grace, the title track, really cool art rock. Last Goodbye, I love the Eastern guitar riffs on that. Lilac Wine, absolutely awesome atmospheric song that the first time I heard that, it just really grabbed my ears and pulled me in hard. Really awesome stuff. Of course, you have the cover of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, the definitive version of that song. It's an absolute masterpiece. Yeah, this is just considered to be one of the greatest, most critically acclaimed albums on the face of the planet. However, I do think on the back end there is just a little bit of filler which stops this climbing any higher for me personally. But still, it's a record that everybody should hear at least once in their life. Great stuff. So we're going to be kicking off the top 5 with Definitely Maybe by Oasis, which was the band's debut album. So yeah, this is just another really iconic Britpop album. It sold millions in its home country of the UK and pretty much defined the entire genre. This record is just a celebration of just straight rock and roll goodness. It just feels like all the amplifiers are turned up to 11 on this. It's really upfront and in your face, but even though it's really distorted, Noel Gallagher's guitar playing is still really melodic, and Liam has just immediately identifiable iconic voices, and yet there are tons of really good songs on this. Rock and Roll Star, Shaker Maker, Live Forever, Columbia, Supersonic, Cigarettes and Alcohol, Slide Away. Yeah, this record is just stuffed with really great songs. I mean, it is a bit one note in the tonal department, but it's just the sheer joy that rolls off this thing. You know, the lyrics are all about kind of like being egotistical and in control and the best at everything and wanting to live forever and be young and drink and smoke, and yeah, that's pretty much the Britpop era in a nutshell. So yeah, an easy placing on this list. Coming in next, we have Dummy, which was the debut album by trip hop band Portishead. And when you think of trip hop, you immediately think of like a rap record, but actually none of the lyrics on this are rapped. They're all beautifully sung in a kind of sultry way by female singer Beth Gibbons. And yeah, this is just a really iconic album of atmospheric chill out. It's very ahead of its time and definitely one of the defining records of the trip hop genre. It's very influential. And it was also like a very ubiquitous record in the mid to late 90s. I mean, if you went to any kind of like artisan party or a party hosted by someone in the mid 20s, at some point during the evening, this record just was going to get played. In fact, I'm not sure I can even recall hearing this album without a fucking glass of wine in my hand. But yeah, like as far as individual songs go, because of its chill out nature, I don't really think there's any point to detail them, because they're just all really kind of relaxing, slow paced, chill out, atmospheric kind of songs. But sure, if you insist, I mean, Sour Times has that classic chorus of "Nobody loves me, it's true." That's just immediately iconic. And also the closing track, Glory Box, is just familiar from like a million TV commercials. But the whole is better than the sum of its parts, because as I said, it's like super atmospheric and super consistent, no bad tracks on it. And yeah, if you're ever having some kind of bourgeoisie middle-class swingers party and you need something to put on in the background, Portishead have definitely got your back with this one.
Take a ride, take a shot now.
So, coming in third place and taking home the bronze medal, we have Promenade by the Divine Comedy, which was the Divine Comedy's either second or third album, depending on if you count Fanfare for the Comic Muse. For more details on the ins and outs of the Divine Comedy's career, please go and check out the full ranking video I did on them. I will link that at the end of the video. And yeah, this is just an exceptional album of Parisian-styled chamber pop. It's absolutely magnificent. It's actually a concept album about two lovers spending the day together, and yeah, just really fantastic lyrics on this as well. The lyrics are all kind of literarily astute, and Neil Hannon is just a master lyricist, and he's just on fire throughout this entire record. And yeah, plenty of fantastic tracks on this. I love every song off this actually, but highlights include The Book Lovers, Neil Hannon just reading off lots of famous authors, a seafood song, really hilarious. I absolutely love his rap about like fish on the end of that song. The Summer House is my favorite Divine Comedy song of all time, just an absolutely gorgeous piano ballad, just absolutely fantastic. Tonight We Fly is a Divine Comedy standard, just sweeps you off your feet and up into the sky like Raymond Briggs and his Snowman. So yeah, this is just a masterpiece of a chamber pop record and highly recommended. Silver medal time, and the silver medal is going to go to Voxel and I by Morrissey, which I consider to be Morrissey's best solo album and definitely one of his best albums overall. Hell, we already did Oasis versus Blur. How about a little bit of Morrissey solo versus the Smiths? No, let's not go there. I'm just kidding, I wouldn't tease you like that. Let's go there. For me, it doesn't really matter because it's all a continuation of the same thing. I mean, Morrissey was making music with Johnny Marr, Andy Rourke and Mike Joyce, and then he was making music with Alan White and Boz Bore, you know what I mean? Sure, the style changed a little bit, but it's still a continuation in the same vein. I think if I were to rank all the Smiths records and all the Morrissey records, definitely all the Smith stuff would be, in the top half towards the top. But definitely the best solo Morrissey records would also be mixing it up with the best Smiths records. So take from that what you will. I love the Smiths and I love Morrissey solo. And yeah, as I say, this is, in my opinion, Morrissey's best solo record. I absolutely love it. This record is Morrissey at his saddest. Just prior to this record, a few people in Morrissey's inner circle had died, and he was just feeling, really low about that. And his lyrics on this are just like full of misery and sadness and resignation, and it's matched by the kind of production on this. This has a kind of like a dreamlike, hypnotic, almost ethereal kind of production on it. It's really cool, and plenty of like absolutely fantastic tracks on this. Some of Morrissey's best ever songs are on this. Now My Heart Is Full, The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get, Why Don't You Find Out For Yourself, The Closer, Speedway. Oh my god, Speedway, that's such a kick-ass song. Like, those are easily amongst Morrissey's best songs ever. And otherwise, there are just no bad tracks on this. So yeah, just a flawless piece of Morrissey, and an easy second placing on this list. So here we are at the top of the mountain, and the gold medal for 1994 is going to go to The Holy Bible, which was the third album by the Manic Street Preachers. And yeah, this is pretty much the darkest album ever made in the history of music. On this record, the lyricist Richie Edwards was just breaking apart during the making of this album, and he was battling depression and alcohol abuse, and his mental state was in a really dark place, and he had taken to actually performing self-mutilation during interviews and sometimes on stage. He famously carved the words "for real" into his arm with a fucking razor blade. And this had the effect of turning him into a messianic figure, akin to like Kurt Cobain and Ian Curtis. A god for the dark kids, basically. I mean, fans would send him sets of knives and ask him to cut himself for them. Unfortunately, it all ended in tears, because in one of the great mysteries of rock and roll, he just up and vanished on the eve of the US tour and was never seen again. In fact, he was actually declared dead in 2008. And the last evidence of his existence was his car, found abandoned near a renowned local suicide spot. So, now after all this time has passed, I think it's pretty safe to assume that the poor bastard killed himself. And what is it about people killing themselves on the eve of US tours? I mean, do people really hate like giant hamburgers and steaks that much? Anyway, yeah, so this album is kind of a concept album about the disgusting, corrupt nature of humanity. I think the crux of the album is summed up with the spoken word sample on Mausoleum. I wanted to rub the human face in its own vomit and force it to look in the mirror. So yeah, this record's lyrics are kind of like reading the killer's journals in the movie Seven. I mean, just a quick flick through the track titles will just let you know what you're in for. I mean, you have If White America Told the Truth for One Day Their World Would Fall Apart, Of Walking Abortion, Sheer Suffering, Archives of Pain, Mausoleum, Die in the Summertime, The Intense Humming of Evil. Yeah, these songs are not songs that are full of sunshine and rainbows. And yeah, the instrumental accompaniment on this LP is really punky, aggressive, and energetic. It veers between catchy riffing and relentless hellscapes. And the singer James Dean Bradfield has his hands full on this record, because the lyrics are so complex that often he just doesn't have space to sing them. Sometimes he's trying to squeeze 15 syllables into a part of the song that's obviously, been designed for 7. This makes catching up with what he's singing actually quite difficult. So yeah, this is a record that demands you to sit down with a lyric sheet and give it its full attention. If you don't do that, you're not really going to get much from this. I mean, this isn't a record you can just stick on in the background of a party, unless the ultimate goal of that party is to, mass suicide. But if you do actually give it its due and pay attention to it, you'll be rewarded with one of the most intense, dark, and disturbing listens of all time. And at this point in time, it just feels even more pertinent with everything that's going on in the world. I mean, it has a song called Revol, and the opening lyrics of that are just rallying against the dictators of Russia, and with what's happening now in Ukraine, that song just feels more timely than ever. So basically, this album is an absolute fucking masterpiece that you owe it to yourself to hear. And that's it. That's my list for 1994. But that might not be your list. Tell me all the classic records that I've missed down in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe, and all that kind of YouTube jazz. Check back for my 1995 list. But most of all, just keep on ranking.